It's the Mike Schickman Show. News Talk 550 and 92.1 WSVA.
Mike Schickman Show on WSVA. Very pleased to have a return guest, a Tea Party conservative, a writer, a talk show host, and a attorney in Dallas-Fort Worth. Her name is Debbie Georgatos, and she joins us again this afternoon. And I was going to talk to her about the David French, Bill Kristol debacle, but now that seems to have kind of been hushed aside, if you pardon the pun. And, you know, if I was Ted Cruz, Debbie, I would run ads saying, you know, if you'd help me, instead of getting on my you-know-what, you wouldn't have this problem today.
You are so right. And first, thanks for having me. You know, Ted Cruz's supporters, and I will acknowledge for your listeners, one of which I was, and I'm in Texas, and a lot of us in Texas supported Ted Cruz. I'm beside ourselves listening to the kind of just how the campaign rhetoric is going, how just someone, you know, Donald Trump isn't a bad guy, but he's kind of clumsy, are good words about his language, inartful, tactless. And he's saying things that are just getting him in hot water and distracting media attention. He doesn't seem to know how to extract himself.
No, you know what he is, Debbie? He's a rich guy who never had to kowtow to anybody. And now, as a presidential candidate, by definition, he has to kowtow to everybody. And this is not in his DNA.
I agree with that. And you know what else is interesting? Because he really, I mean, to give him Donald Trump credit, he did clear the field of 16 other really many of them very qualified candidates for president. He's feeling emboldened. He had kind of a larger-than-life, bold personality to start with, and then he cleared the field, not taking the advice of hardly anyone telling him, you ought to tone it down, don't call people idiots, don't send late-night tweets that are mean, don't do that. He continued behaving the way he did and won, and I think he feels he doesn't really need the advice. He feels kind of invincible right now.
You know, I have to tell you, though, as we've seen this past year, whenever the mainstream, whether media or Republicans or Democrats, start to complain about Donald being gauche or racist or anything else, his numbers go up.
Yeah, and you know, this particular controversy that has been in the news a lot today and yesterday about Donald Trump's comments about the judge who's overseeing the civil case involving Trump University, his comments, he called the judge a hater, he questioned his ability to be fair and all that. This plays right into the hands of people who are tired of political correctness, who feel like, you know, we can't talk honestly about the problems of immigration and border security that we have. And then you see the people in the streets protesting when Donald Trump tries to speak. These are many of them happily acknowledging illegally here, demanding the right to citizenship. And, you know, what he says and things like talking about Judge Curiel and the Trump University case, this plays into the hands of his supporters who say, yes, keep right on talking. Stop being bullied, or we on the right want to not be bullied anymore by political correctness, where we can't even say what's really true, because there are reasons that Donald Trump has valid concerns about this judge. He's just so clumsy in how he says it.
Well, I don't know if clumsy is the phrase I would use. I think with the Donald, and again, part of this is, and as a native myself, is a New Yorker kind of thing. You know, New Yorkers have learned after 9/11 to be more politically correct, but really inside less so. You know, a toleration between races, cultures in this country has been at the lowest in, you know, since the 50s. Since the 50s and 60s. I mean, right now, there is no tolerance at all for other people. And we are seeing this in the media, on Facebook. We're seeing it all over. And unfortunately, it's taken a life of its own. And so if you're on the left, you don't believe anything from the right. If you're on the right, Heaven for, Hillary Clinton is the Antichrist. But if you're in the middle, like so many Americans really are, it's hold your nose and vote for whom?
Yeah, I'm going to say I think the hold your nosers are probably going to end up on the side of Donald Trump. Now, I'm going to say one more thing about political correctness, which I think frustrates a lot of conservatives. And I know it's been in the media talked about a lot today, but it really bears just a tiny bit of focus. In 2009, when Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor, was confirmed to be the Supreme Court Justice, there had been examples brought out, and they were actually in the Senate hearing deciding on her nomination, where she said several things, very bluntly saying that she thinks that wise Latino women would make better judges and make better decisions than old white men. And so that's racist. I mean, that's a blunt racist statement. It wasn't just one. It was numerous statements. I have them all right in front of me. I won't read them all. But that kind of stuff, I think people listen to and say, why isn't someone saying don't say that? Why isn't someone saying that's problematic, that we don't judge people by their race and their ethnicity? We judge them by their judicial competence. I'm a lawyer by background. I really do. I have respect for the judiciary overall. And I think she got away with statements like that. There was almost no media piling on her except in conservative circles. But now, and again, I go back, I know clumsy is too kind a word or something, but Donald Trump, he's just kind of like a steamroller, like a tank rolling through. He says whatever he thinks, but still it kind of resonates with people. They're thinking, this judge doesn't seem to be quite... He may not be capable of giving an absolutely the best job in being an unbiased, impartial justice. And so they don't mind so much he's bringing it up, even if he doesn't say it very well.
Debbie Georgatos is our guest, a lawyer, a commentator, 433-9782 if you have a question. I think it also feeds into our paranoia. I mean, what if Trump's right? Is a certain paranoia. But before, Donald gets enough pub that I don't have to give him that much more on my show, I want to ask you about Bill Kristol. Bill Kristol has taken his spot above we'll call it the Republican conservative media, and seems to have lost his mind. David French? Now, I mean, if he would have pulled Mitt in, you say, okay, presidential candidate, at least there's some chance. And Mitt would have probably, won the race for Hillary. No doubt about it.
Yep.
But David French, I had David French on my show a couple of times, so I knew who he was. But I don't think anybody else did.
Yeah, it's interesting. I happen to read the website that he's on quite often, National Review. He's a brilliant writer and thinker. David French, when I notice he has a new column, I like to read it. I think he's pretty smart. But he is known to about, the 1% of the 1% who happen to enjoy reading politics at that depth. And so he's a complete unknown, not only lacking, any history in politics, but any other reason to have been known on the national stage, unlike Donald Trump. And so, to me, it shows the desperation a lot of conservatives feel about this election cycle. They just can hardly believe. And see, I will say, I thought this, and you may have too, but I thought after 7+ years of President Obama, and I see many of his policies as failed policies, I thought the country was ready for a conservative. They finally would have seen, again, the weakness of the of liberal policies and want a conservative. And then we end up with these two choices we have in front of us. So Bill Kristol, I think, is just feeling desperate, and I'm sorry, because I'm glad that trial balloon kind of was a lead balloon.
It actually sounded more like a more than anything else. But, the thing is, and in Washington political media, and this is where we come down to it, people like Bill Kristol, George Will, Fred Barnes, you can go through a litany of these guys and gals, and they all think they know better than the American people. And the American people are tired of it.
Couldn't agree more. People refer to the political elite that the complaints been this last 7 years or more that the GOP doesn't listen to the voters. Ted Cruz has Make D.C. Listen. But that's just the elected officials. that Ted Cruz is talking about. To your point, there are a lot of people in kind of the intellectual leading elite circle that really think they know everything and what needs to happen, and they are just kind of looking at the emergence of Donald Trump as a result of the unwashed masses not being able to be as wise as they are, and people don't like it. I mean, this is why this talk about trying to get to the convention and somehow the delegates playing some game where they're going to abstain in the first vote and force Donald Trump not to win, and then they get to a second vote and we'll bring Ted Cruz in after all. That's pretty dangerous. I mean, that is really telling the unwashed masses who voted for Donald Trump overwhelmingly that, you know, we just don't care what you think. I think that's really dangerous path.
Yeah, you know, all those guys, all those folks, and both on the left and the right, are believers in the cigar smoke-filled rooms, though they will never admit it. They'd like to have control. The whole super delegate thing for the Democrats, this whole John Boehner, Mitch McConnell ripping Donald Trump. Mitch, you know, it's like I said this when Mitt Romney opened his mouth. Mitch, it's time to shut up and go away. Nobody cares what you have to say.
You know, I would say, yes, I agree. And then Donald Trump and really the emergence of Ted Cruz also, they are a result of the politics of Mitch McConnell and John Boehner and other of the leading Republican leadership in the House and the Senate in Washington, where they haven't listened to the people in years. They think they know better, and the voter anger is so palpable, not just at the Democrats for the direction of the country, but the GOP primary voters upset with their own party. Mitch McConnell caused, and people like him, caused the Donald Trump emergence. We want someone totally outside, and what I fear, though, is his misplaced confidence in Donald Trump's ability to do what people think he can do. I'm afraid that he won't accomplish what all of his supporters think, but he's there. Trump is there as the victor because of people like Mitch McConnell.
Debbie, if people can read your stuff at ladiescanwetalk.org, correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming in, and join us again, won't you?
We sure will, and thanks for having me.
That's Debbie Georgatos joining us today on WSVA. She is a delight.